pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming tonight, everyone that's here, and welcome to our audience on Norton Cable. We welcome you to our Focus on Norton series, sponsored by the Norton Republican Town Committee. And I'm Paul Rawazzi, a familiar face. We've had a number of these already, and I can't believe how many we've had starting 2 years ago. I'm chairperson of the Norton Republican Town Committee. Please bear in mind that the focus on Norton's goal is to inform the people of Norton what is happening in our community and to continue to grow our community into an informed electorate. That's an important subject these days. Our guest speakers are those charged with serving our community. We have them tell their story, and this event can be viewed on local cable TV via the video menu in the Norton Media Center website. In our audience tonight, we have our current state representative, Jay Barrows, and I'm going to not cry about this, but he's retiring from us, 18 years to be exact, and he has invited Michael Chasen of Foxborough as his guest, who will be running to succeed Jay. And Michael is in the audience, and thanks for coming. There will be a September primary, as I understand it, and then a final election in November. So welcome, Michael. And I ask the members to please stick around after the meeting to introduce yourself to him if you haven't already. We also have in our group a little representation from the Mass GOP, State Committee woman Julie Hall, who represents Bristol and Norfolk. Julie's in the audience as well.
Don't forget Steve.
And Steve Howard, State Representative Steve. Thank you for coming, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Also, I want to make mention of a pitch. We finally have developed the fundraising brochures for the Norton Senior Center. I left them on the table there, and we'd like you to look into having that. We're raising money outside of the wonderful appropriations that town meeting and others, we're getting that progress is being made. That place is hopefully going to open by the middle of this summer. So please feel generous in any way you can, and any donation is really helpful. So without further ado, tonight we have our guest speaker, Norton Fire Chief Shawn Simmons. Shawn says he doesn't like to give big speeches, and I asked him he doesn't have to. He wants a lot of Q&A. Briefly, he started his career in emergency service as a call firefighter, EMT in Dartmouth, Mass. He has lived in Norton since 1996 and began working for the Norton Fire Department as a firefighter paramedic in 1998. As a member of the Norton Fire Department, he served in several roles: Director of Emergency Services, Training Officer, Captain, Deputy Chief, and was appointed to the position of Fire Chief in 2019. Chief Simmons also assists other agencies that facilitate education and the progression of fire and rescue services delivery to the county and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He was an instructor for the Mass Fire Academy for the recruit and technical rescue programs over a decade. He has served as director of Bristol County Technical Rescue Team. He is currently on several committees, including technical rescue and hazardous materials for the Bristol County Fire Chiefs. I guess that goes with the territory.
Right.
Going to be everything like that. Yeah, Professional Development Committee, and for the Fire Chief Association of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Technical Rescue Subcommittee. Shawn, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction. Good evening. Thank you very much for the invite. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, talk to you about the fire department. When it comes to talking about the fire department, sometimes I can tend to be long-winded from what I've been told. I promise you I'll try not to do that tonight. Talking to public usually reduces that time frame of being long-winded, so I think you'll be okay. But like Paul had said, seriously, if you have any questions throughout the talk, feel free to interrupt me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd much prefer to give you guys the information that you really like to have about the department. Okay, so I figured I would just start by giving you a brief overview of the services that our department provides. Some of them are the ones you recognize. Some of them you'd probably be surprised to find out that we actually do. I'll give you a quick overview of some of the things that are currently going on for the department as well. And then, like I said, we'll open it up to questions for y'all, okay? Sound good? Any questions yet? No? All right. So just, I had to write it down here just so I don't forget to mention anything. But we respond to about 400 about 4,000 calls for service per year for the department, which is quite a bit. About 70% of those are probably emergency medical services calls. The rest are fire and some of the miscellaneous stuff that I'll go over with you. So our big thing is the ambulance service for the most part. We do provide paramedic advanced level life support on the ambulance. So we have paramedics administering over 50 different medications. We do diagnostic 12 lead EKGs. Cardiac electrical therapy, like a pacemaker. We can actually give somebody a pacemaker. We can bring that machine right into their business or residence or whatever the case may be. Defibrillation, we do cardioversion. Certain surgical procedures, like we do cricothyrotomies, needle chest decompressions. And we even, about a year ago, added ultrasound to the ambulances now, too. We currently have about 6 people training ultrasound, and we're looking to send a few more shortly. So that's pretty neat. Obviously, y'all know we do the fire suppression. We also do investigations. So that involves locating and extinguishing fires, and also investigating the cause and origin after a fire. The law requires that we investigate every fire, so we have fire investigators. We do hazardous materials incident mitigation, and that can be anything from a gas leak or an odor, fuel spill, or major chemical spill or anything in between. So we do rescue, and that would be like vehicle extrication, water and ice rescue, technical rescue incidents, which involve rescues from confined space, trench collapse, structural collapse, high angles like somebody's on a bridge or a cliff and that type of thing. And then we also do integration with the police department for active shooter incidents, which when I first started my career in this line of work, I never thought I'd be saying that, but we actually have ballistic vests on all of our apparatus now to support every firefighter that's on there. So we're required through the Office of Emergency Medical Services to actually do that training. We train frequently with our police department, do an excellent job with that as well. So again, just kind of changing with the times, right? So for fire prevention stuff, we do inspections, we do plan reviews, pre-construction meetings for projects, consultations, fire alarm systems maintenance and repair, code enforcement, we have public education. We do a lot of things with the schools. We do fire safety and first aid for Boy Scouts and civic groups and that sort of thing as well. And then just miscellaneous stuff, like you might not realize that we do, like motor vehicle lockouts, house lockouts. We do car seat installations for people. You have to actually be certified to install a car seat, believe it or not. It's about a 40-hour course, which was
40 hours to put one in.
yeah, right. Which is about the same amount of time for you to figure it out on your own, I guess, right? But yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive course. I was surprised when I first heard that. So water, gas, electrical emergencies. I'm sure if those of you who live in town are familiar with the water emergencies that we've been dealing with recently. We've had a lot of flooding. Just over the past weekend, we did about 12 flooded basement calls. We have roads that are flooding and that sort of stuff. So trees falling onto structures, trees falling onto wires, utility pole fires, station tours for children, and I also say in the parents, because generally they bring their children to tour the station, but the parents usually have at least 5 times more questions than the parents do, which is awesome. I love doing that. And then honestly, anything else that you can think of. If you call 911 and they're not really sure what department or agency it kind of falls into, generally will be the ones that get sent out there to deal with that. So hopefully that's a little bit informative for you. Any questions on any of that stuff? Mr. Library? Okay. So just some stuff that we have kind of currently going on in the department right now. We just submitted a grant a couple months ago for over $400,000 for replacement of our air packs, which have been due for replacement for a couple of years. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that. We're working towards implementing a new report management system, which is the system that we fill out all of our fire reports in, as well as a new computer-aided dispatch system, which integrates with the 911 center. So all this is made possible through our regional dispatch center, SEMRAC. So it's all being funded by them in large part through grant money. So it'll be a new.
Foxborough, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in fact just on Route 1. Probably about 1.5 miles from the stadium or so. Yep. We recently, about 3 months ago, hired 3 members to fill existing openings. One of our challenges at the department is finding paramedics to hire. We were fortunate; we found 3 really good people. One of them was in paramedic school. One of them is in between. He's from Rhode Island originally, so he's in a cardiac program. So he's going to transition to be a paramedic. And then one of them is a veteran, and we'll be sending him to paramedic school. So we're fortunate enough to find 3 really good people. We're in the process of finalizing our spec for a new ambulance. Another challenge we have is we actually ordered another ambulance about almost 3 years ago, and we still don't even have a delivery date for it yet. All right, so we just found out it should be by the end of this year sometime. So we'll see if that happens. Thankfully, we haven't had any major mechanical breakdowns of the ones that we have. So we requested recently, our last capital request, we requested replacement of our ladder truck, which is actually 25 years old. That'll be a really expensive purchase for the town if that gets approved, but it's got about a 25-year life expectancy. So all of us should be retired and moved on before we need to get another one after that, right? And we're also just finalizing the process of writing a hazard mitigation plan for the town. And that's with the assistance of a lot of department heads and community members and some resident experts in certain areas. So what a hazard mitigation plan is to identify risks that exist in the town for natural disasters and to try to develop a strategic plan to prevent or minimize the impacts of those risks. So we actually hired a consultant to help us with that. We have about 12 people on the committee, and the consultant was paid for through a grant that we got, a federal grant for $25,000. So that's all good stuff that we're kind of working on right now. So, all right, I think that's enough for me rambling. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
Chief, you and I were speaking earlier about battery scooters,
Yeah.
battery bicycles, even battery cars, about the hazards of either storing them inside or even if they have the wrong charger on. Could you elaborate on that? I think it's very important that people realize that just because they have the batteries doesn't mean they can hook up any charger.
That's correct.
Whether they're UL approved, et cetera, as we were.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. It is, we have had a few major incidents from lithium-ion batteries specifically, which tend to be the most dangerous. The trouble with lithium-ion, if you don't use the proper charger, it can cause a fire. Or if the battery's damaged and you still try to charge it and that sort of thing. And the trouble with lithium-ion fires is, generally, like you had mentioned actually earlier, generally how we put out a fire is we either eliminate the heat, the oxygen, the fuel, or stop the chemical chain reaction, right? With lithium-ion fires, you can't really do any of those things. They'll generate their own oxygen. You can't cool them off enough to put them out because as soon as it dies down, whether it be 5 minutes or 5 days later, it'll reignite again. So they pose a significant challenge for us. But you can prevent that a lot by just using the proper chargers, not charging things near combustible materials and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Sean, I think we talked on the phone. I thought we were under attack last week with the solar panel fire
Yeah.
at International Auto Parts. Explain that hazard, both for them and of course
Right,
the homeowner.
right. Yeah, that was
Starting a panel, is that correct?
Yeah, that was an interesting call. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was at Auto Parts
I
International.
saw Attleboro with that great big ladder. that
Yeah.
was Up on the roof.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was too short.
They helped us out. They helped us out a lot. We had our ladder in one position, and we put their ladder in another position, which was a little bit closer to the fire.
Right.
So-
How did that happen? I mean,
So interesting enough, that call was actually called in by somebody outside of the building
wow.
that actually saw the fire.
Wow.
So when we got there were still people working inside that building. And there was a pretty significant active solar panel fire on the roof. So it was pretty challenging. So solar panel fires are challenging in themselves because they're difficult to access because it's on the roof. Like you said, you need a ladder that's going to be able to reach it. And obviously they're powered, right? And they're generating their own power. So we disconnected the power to the building from the solar panels, and we also disconnected the power, National Grid disconnected the power at the street. But one of the main concerns for us is actually accessing them when you get up on the roof. Can you get close enough to where the area is? Is the roof structure safe? Because there's also added weight on there from the solar panels, right? And then, how are we gonna put the fire out? We're gonna try extinguishers or water, whatever the case may be. But the big problem with the solar panels is that you can disconnect the power that they're putting out, but you can't disconnect the power that they're generating. Okay, so those solar panels are always going to be producing power. And this is the same if you have a residence or a commercial building or whatever the case may be. You can't shut off any of the individual solar panels. You can only cut the power from this being.
Can you blanket them?
You technically could. You could use like a really thick, what we would call a salvage cover, which is just a really heavy-duty type of tarp. But the trouble is getting close enough to do that, and to do it in an area that's not actually already on fire, and then the ones that are still on fire are still likely partially generating current as well. So it's a yeah.
So it's a
It's a tough call for it's a tough call for us to mitigate. Yeah.
We
So-
talked about, the solar fields, right, where you there's a move to build some over cranberry bogs.
Mm-hmm.
And what seems to come with them now, it used to be you'd put the field up and you'd plug it into the
Grid.
to the grid.
Yep,
That was
yep.
it, walk away. And now people want to build these huge battery banks,
Yep.
storage facilities. They're in the, as close to where the power is generated, because you're going to get the most bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
But there's concern that what if one of those caught fire? This would be like 120 Teslas,
Yeah.
stacked on top of one another.
Yeah, that'd be definitely a long-duration incident if that would,
Right.
if that would happen.
And then what happens to the water table? If something like that did catch, and again, you're putting whatever on it,
Right,
and then that's going into a highly sensitive
right, right.
water table, and it just seems like we're upside down.
Yeah, so you have the smoke issues, or you have the environmental issues from the soil contamination, right? So there's a lot of codes that are required to be in place for those battery storage systems. One of them is to have a sustainable water source that's in close enough proximity to be effective to that. They're also required to have what we call like a fire department connection. So it would actually have like a sprinkler system, if you can just picture it like this is a container, with a pipe coming out, going down, and then going out to a safe enough distance where we could actually connect to that and supplement that internal sprinkler system so that we could flood the batteries that way as well. But the trouble is, like I was saying earlier, they just burn continuously. So even if you get the fire knocked down, you really would have to sit there for several days probably until you have a rep come.
Even if they're underwater,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
don't need oxygen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the vehicles as well.
I know
Right.
during the flood in Florida, they were popping them in swimming pools. It did too.
Yeah, you can take it out a week later and it'll just get on fire again. So, which leads me kind of like an interesting concept that, like for us, something that we would consider is, sometimes you might be better off just to let that fire consume itself, let it consume all the fuel, right? Because eventually that way it'll go out, and likely that's probably going to be the quickest way and safest way to put that actual fire out. So, if you take like that container that you were just talking about, or possibly like an electric vehicle. I can tell you, for me, it would be an evaluation of where is that in relation to other things that might get damaged if we allow the fire to continue to burn. So it's kind of like a risk versus benefit. And that same tactic can also be applied to hazardous materials, and sometimes too it's safer. Sounds counterintuitive, and I'm sure if we ever do it, a bunch of people will be driving by being like, why are you just standing there? But sometimes it's the safest thing to do is to let that fuel, that hazardous
You gotta worry
material.
about runoff and
Right.
where that dirty water is going.
Right, yeah,
In and around.
yeah.
Chief, you were talking about the weight of those units at the auto parts store. Now, when a resident, for example, wants to put solar on their house, and there are many solar companies out there, and everyone gives the best deal, do they come to you first? Do they have to get a building permit?
They do.
And then, does your department also look at the structure besides the building department?
We don't so generally, especially if it's a bigger, like a commercial building, they'll be required to have architectural or engineered stamped drawings to indicate that it can support that additional weight, or do work to make it support that additional weight, right? We do get a chance to review the plans. We don't inspect the building for structural integrity, whether it can bear that load or not. But we do have a little bit in our code as far as like the setbacks from the ridge line and the roof line, and where the disconnects are and some of the labeling and that sort of thing.
But for a resident who is looking to put solar on their roof, what would their procedure usually be?
They would start off at the building department, yeah. And they would be primarily dealing with the electrical inspector and to some degree the building inspector.
So you're
Yep.
really not too involved in that?
Not so much with the residential part of it, yeah.
Is the
So-
code such that you can still, we were talking earlier about being able to vent,
How do you
guys
vent
wanna
the roof?
open it
Yeah,
up?
yeah. So some of the new codes that's starting to come out, I don't know if it's actually been approved yet, but one of the things I saw recently was an 18-inch setback from the ridge line.
Okay.
So if you have that on both sides, that almost gives us, if you cut right to the panel, like 3 feet to ventilate. And sometimes we'll cut holes in people's roofs to exhaust the heat and the smoke out of there so that we can get in closer to the fire to try to extinguish it before it extends to another room and continues to propagate, So, Ralph?
So what's at the high school, where they're a standalone solar system, do you find that that's safer and better than on the flat roof of the middle school, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if I had my choice for one of them to be on fire, I would pick the one that's standalone.
It's not attached to the building?
It's not attached to the building. I mean, we'd have the issue of the cars that were underneath that we'd need to figure out, you know. But you wouldn't lose a whole building, and there likely wouldn't be people that were still sitting in their cars when we got there.
Right
'Cause
of some of those restrictions and regulations?
It's all done by the code, by the electrical code primarily.
State.
Yeah. That's where all those requirements are.
But it's interesting,
Yeah.
because we're kind of like getting out over our skis a little bit, right? This stuff is coming fast and
Yeah.
furious. And you look at the high school with those, huge structures, and then, underneath them, you got little bombs. Really, when you think about it, the cars with gasoline and.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
How quickly could you can't. I mean, I don't know. Can you
Right.
move them, get them out of there?
It would depend on the situation. Sometimes, you give you a quick example. A while back, we responded probably a couple of years ago. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning for smell of smoke in the area, and it was down near Waste Management. Ended up being there was 10 trash trucks on fire by the time we got in the back and realized that. And so, what do you do in that situation? Well, you look in, like, we're writing all those off. And then we moved the 2 on each end. We just figured out a way to move them. Some of them started on their own. Some of them we finagled and just found a way to get them out of there. And then kind of make a stand at that point, right? So to your point would be, I would imagine if there were cars underneath there and directly above, adjacent to where that fire was, below, I should say, that may be a tactic that we would have to employ.
Right.
And then try to move the other ones that were still safe to do so, But I will say, with that being said, that fire that we had the other day is probably the first solar panel fire that I've been to in town. So, where they do pose challenges for us, but they're not catching on fire every day either, And I think we probably had maybe,
It's not a trend
yeah,
yet.
we probably had 2 or 3 lithium-ion battery fires and stuff in people's houses from like scooters or something like that where they brought them in. But you take that and put that in like New York City where they've had, hundreds of lithium-ion fires and multiple fatalities. They've changed a lot of their regulations over there as a result, so.
Shawn, you mentioned, I guess I'd call it disaster plan or emergency preparedness. What is, hey, we had a little earthquake the other day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We talking mostly in Norton, the flood exposure? Or-
That's definitely one of our biggest things, as like I said, we all know that live in town, myself included, I live in town too, and
Right.
my sump pump goes back on as soon as it shuts off again lately. So, but yeah, so that plan is pretty much just trying to identify it covers a lot of things, from earthquakes to flooding, to tornadoes, to hurricanes, invasive species, wildland fires, the list goes on. So kind of what we do is we take a look at all those things and we kind of rate, like, how vulnerable we are to each of these things, right? And, how costly would that be? How extensive would that damage be?
Is there an independent third party doing this?
Yeah, they're kind of, steering the ship, and we're all, participating with the local knowledge and expertise that we have in our respective areas, so.
Yeah.
And the other good thing I think I didn't mention in the beginning is after our plan is developed, it goes as a public review period. We've had public meetings where also the public can comment and give input and voice concerns. After that, it goes to the state to be reviewed and approved. From there, it goes to FEMA to be reviewed and approved. And then after that, it goes back to the select board for approval. They've probably already reviewed it by that point. And then after we get through all that, which we're probably about 4 or 5 months away from that point, it would actually qualify us to submit for substantial amounts of grant money to make infrastructure improvements, which we can't, it's a requirement for a lot of those grants. So right now, we're not able to submit for those, so.
Chief, you're talking about trying to purchase a new ladder truck.
Yep.
And I know in a couple of my towns, they have recently purchased within the last few years, but the backup was at least a year or two, just like your ambulance.
Yep.
So people sometimes expect you to order it, it's like going into
Yeah.
a car dealership and driving away with
Yeah.
it, but it isn't that case. And everything is an option, and they're usually fitted specifically for what you need.
Correct.
Talking to some of my other chiefs, what people don't realize, it's not so much how high it goes, how far it goes on a
Yeah.
horizontal. And that's where, people say, oh, well, you don't have any 5-story buildings, but the idea that you can get out and over an area horizontally is very important for the height of that ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. Both great points. First, it's last I heard was 27-month lead time, so you could probably add another 6 months onto that, I'm guessing, right? And yeah, it's the hypotenuse of the triangle, like you said, because a lot of people, remember I was telling you about doing the tours for the parents? That's a really common question that people will ask. Why do you need a 110-foot ladder? We don't have anything higher than 4 or 5 stories. And I'm like, well, you don't park right up against the building and just put it straight up, right? So, and a lot of times there's obstructions in the way, driveways, curbsides, trees, power lines. You have to be able to put in a position to navigate all that. So, yeah.
So Chief, my wife and I took the CPR course that you guys offered last year, and it was great. I know they're having a couple more this year. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Roger. We actually have one coming up. I feel like it might be tomorrow, and then one next month. And unfortunately, they both filled up in short order. So
Unfortunately.
yeah, it's fortunate, but unfortunate if you still want to take one of those classes. But so we're probably going to be adding at least one more, maybe 2 more, hopefully within the next few weeks. So that'll be on our website, and we'll post that to Facebook and social media. So
Chief,
they've
how
been
big
pretty
is-
well attended, though.
How big is your department? How many folks are on it?
We have 43 full-time members.
And then you
Right
still
now.
call members as well?
We don't have any call members.
Okay.
Yeah, 43 full-time members.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
Right
I
now.
know that we're coming out of civil service, and
Yeah.
hopefully coming out of civil service by the look of things.
right.
Can you talk a little bit about how that's going to affect your ability to attract more people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I gotta explain just quickly how civil service works right now from a hiring perspective. And we just, like I told you, we just hired 3 people about 3 months ago. And when we do that, I have to formally request a list from civil service. And this is a list of candidates that have taken a common knowledge exam, if you will. And so I request a list of all paramedics that are on there, right? This last time that happened, that list got sent out to, I want to say, like 240-something people in the state. We had 0 people sign up for an interview off of that list of paramedics, okay? So, and every time you do this, you also have to wait, like 10 days for that list to be there, let everybody sign up. Then that doesn't work, then you have to go another week to request a different type of list, and then that process just kind of is cyclical, right? So then from there we requested, from there we requested a basic EMT list, okay? So we did get, I want to say, about 18 candidates from that, but now they're not paramedics, okay? So when we were fortunate enough, like I said earlier, to find somebody that was in paramedic school, somebody that was transitioning to become a paramedic, and then another one that was a basic EMT that we'll have to send to paramedic school. But so getting out of civil service, to answer your question, will basically allow us to basically just advertise an open position and request applications. We already have an online application form that we've set up, and we can rate the applications based on the criteria that we're looking for, schedule the interviews, and we can proceed with that. And also another example I'll tell you in the past is we had a person from another fire department that wanted to transfer over to our fire department. They were a civil service department, so were we. And in order to do that, the place that they're coming from has to sign off. Well, they refused to sign off. So we couldn't hire that person who was a paramedic. So thankfully, about a year later, we were able to do that because he retook the civil service exam and did well enough where he scored high enough for us to get into an interview. So the other tough part with the hiring process, like I was telling you about the basic EMT list, is they come out ranked on the list based strictly on their score. There may be some exceptions for like residency status and veteran status and so forth, which is appropriate. But my point is, if I have somebody who's a paramedic that say got a 97, and then I have some, say somebody's 2 weeks away from becoming a paramedic, and we're interviewing them, right? And then I have somebody who just got their basic EMT like a week ago, and they're and they're not a paramedic. They really didn't seem to have ambition to become a paramedic. We can't hire that person that scored 1 point less than them because of the way that the system works. So it's really challenging as far as that goes. So.
Well, I'm glad that you're making them.
Yeah, so I think now it's the premise of the system of no discrimination and being fair and equal opportunity is great, but I think that we can do that just fine on our own because we would never discriminate against anybody. So.
Sean, while we're on the air, you should, since I moved down here, I have not, I've heard so many stories of the EMT service down here, just outstanding. I mean, little kid choking, and I wish he was here, but Steve Hornsby told me his little boy started choking one day, and you guys are over there lickety-split.
Yeah,
His wife was in panic, you know, because particularly, it's really hard to maneuver that situation when you try to do it yourself.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And then I've seen it with seniors, man, my community, someone just basically makes a 911 call.
Yeah.
Kind of overreaction, you guys are lickety-split.
yeah.
You should brag.
No, it's true, you're right. You know, I'll say we're very fortunate, and that's two-way street. We're very fortunate. The community's always been very, very supportive of us.
Tradition, right?
Yeah, and we have a great community. We have great equipment and apparatus, but to your point, by far, our biggest asset and our best asset is our people. We have really, really good people. You know, and they're really passionate about their job. They treat people like they're their own family, and you know, you couldn't ask for better. And we get thank yous all the time from people, but you know,
Sure,
people
have you
do it because
seen-
they love it. You know.
Have you seen some help with the new 911 center with the technology? Has that improved things for us down here in response time and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure about from a response time perspective, but the technology, like I was mentioning earlier, they're getting the new report management system, the new CAD system. We've gotten a new station alerting system, so if you were at the station right now and a call were to come in, you'd look on a big TV screen and you'd actually be able to see where the call is, all the notes from the dispatcher right on that screen. You could see a satellite, you know, in the trucks. We've gotten mobile data terminals in the apparatus now as well. You get all that same information. You can actually look at a satellite view of the place you're going. You can expand, just like you would on your phone. You can expand it, contract it, you know, turn it, and you can also hit a navigate button. And they can update us in real time through text to the mobile data terminals too. So yeah, that's been a huge asset to us. So, and they can even provide us information that you know, that you wouldn't want to put out over the air, because anybody with a scanner can hear, like if they give them like a door code or some
Well,
sort of private information or something like that.
We're really fortunate that the four communities that started it came together,
Yeah,
and through some diligent work of everybody getting along and understanding the end goal.
Yep.
And the support we got from the state was phenomenal.
yeah. The technology is incredible that we have access to
We're
now.
one of the few that has it, and we're accepting more
Yeah.
communities into it.
I mean,
It's been
they have the technology to actually send the 911 caller a text message, have them just click on a link, it opens up the camera on their phone, and they can get footage through the dispatch center and actually forward that to us for incidents and stuff. It's pretty wild when you see that sort of thing too. And coming along with that new system that I was telling you about, we're also going to have a Community Connect system, which will allow residents to be able to register with the fire department. It's all encrypted and the data is all secure. But if you have any pertinent information that you feel would be, you know, advantageous for us to have, if we're on our way or at your house for an emergency, you could actually front load all that information, whether somebody has special needs, pets, door access codes, your contact information in case you're not home. We've gone to people's houses before where they have a pipe broke in or the house is on fire. We can't get a hold of the person that lives there. Sometimes they're on vacation. So, you know, for all those kind of things, that's going to be a pretty neat feature too. That's probably a few months out.
How many of the firefighters are from Norton?
Oh, that's a good question. When I started, probably about 90%, I would say. Yeah. Right now, I'd say don't hold me to this. I could look it up and get back to you with the exact answer if you want. I'm going to say it's probably around 40%. Yeah, I'm just making my best guess without.
I know one of the reasons that I talked to different firefighters, police chiefs around the area, one of the reasons they wanted to get rid of civil service was they felt like they had more of an ability to hire a hometown person, and they felt someone who lives within the city or the town tends to do a lot better job because these are the people they're trying to, and they would rather have those people or be able to have those people.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. If they do, right now in civil service, they do have like a residency preference. So if there's people from your community, they do get actually moved up to the top of that list. So that is kind of reflected in their scoring system, even though there's got a lot of faults. That's not a bad part of it, you know, right there. It's hard to find, like I said, we sent out that paramedic list to 240 people in the whole state. You know what I mean? Certainly if there was somebody from Norton on there that was a paramedic and you know, they were good people, because that's important, you know, they would be working for us right now. So it's been a challenge. I think, what we need to do is encourage the children and stuff to get interested in our field, which we do. We go out into the schools, we do job fairs, we have station tours. We just had one of the vocational schools come in with their CNA program, medical assistant program, and we had them come in on two separate days, gave them a tour of all the equipment, talked to them about the fire service, all the all the good things about it, and so forth. So, yeah, there's also people that I've heard that would prefer not to live in the community that they work in too, right? Because sometimes you're going grocery shopping and you run into somebody that you had just taken care of, the week before, and that sort of things. Sadly, but we see a lot of bad things. There's a lot of good things that we're actually able to accomplish and do, but we also see a lot of bad things. And the likelihood of it being somebody that also goes up when it's your community too. So sometimes people think that way a little bit as well.
Shawn, what about our significant neighbor, Wheaton College? Do you have a pretty good rapport there?
Yeah, we've always had a good relationship with them.
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of exposure, I'm sure.
They do. There's, I want to say about 84 buildings there
Yeah.
that we're responsible for.
Yeah,
There's
is
some
that
pretty
right?
good ones. Yeah.
That's good.
They have no fire department on site.
No.
It is you.
Yeah. And I believe they have somewhere in the area of 2 or 3 full-time public safety staff.
Yep.
And then I believe they utilize a security company.
So from a
To augment
recruitment
that.
standpoint, we can handle them. I mean, they don't have any really large high-rises, do we?
There's a few good-sized buildings there. That new
Yeah.
science center is a 5-story building.
Yeah.
There's chemicals in there.
Yeah.
Same thing with the athletic facility. There's chemicals in there. But I will say they do a good job with fire safety. Our deputy that does fire prevention goes through and inspects all those buildings annually.
Right.
They do fire drills. They're required to. Almost every building on campus is sprinklered. So there's a lot of good things going for them too over there.
Now, you had mentioned, again, we were talking earlier, you had a rollover, I think, on 495. I know that Jay and I had worked to put cables across the median
Yeah.
strip and also to change some of the elevations of the roadway that used to flood. And how often do you get called out, and do people realize that you're also responsible for the highways that run through the towns?
Yeah, I don't know if people are responsible. It's funny, we also have train tracks. I mean, all kinds of, like 116 miles of road in town, schools, nursing homes, so on and so forth. So I'm not sure, and there's a lot of stuff that, like I mentioned, hazardous materials and all that stuff up and down the highway that you'd be actually surprised to know, right? I'd say if, how many times we go out there, probably somewhere in the area of 60, 70 calls per year. A lot of them are accidents. Could be a grass fire, could be a vehicle overheating, could be a vehicle fire. Sometimes people have medical emergencies on the highway and they pull over. But they can also be labor-intensive calls for us. You're on the highway, we've all been on the highway behind an accident, like 2 miles waiting there, like, what's going on up ahead, So even when we're done mitigating the accident that we're at, we're generally in that same traffic trying to get back to the station, and generally we have to go down another exit, turn around, come back. So, that can put us, easily 6 people for just a regular, like, car fire out of service for, an hour easy,
So you've got from Bay Road to the Mansfield 140
Yep, exactly right.
interchange.
Yeah, almost right at the bottom of the on-ramp from Bay Road is where Norton starts.
Right,
Yeah, it's about 7 miles, I believe,
yeah.
of 495.
We're getting some complaints, and maybe, I need to get on it and go, but it's delaminating the highway
I can tell you, if you,
down. I mean, it's like falling apart.
if you go Mansfield Avenue to South Main and get on 495 North over there, it was in really, really bad shape. And they did some patching, which I think I almost might have made it worse.
Yeah.
And so I went over there, I feel like it was yesterday or the day before, and thankfully they actually ground it down.
Okay.
So it's still rough, but at least it's smooth rough. It's not like, because I get concerned.
Double rough.
Yeah, a while back when they were doing the construction on East Main and West Main out here, it was causing a lot of havoc with our engines, with our fire engines and our fire apparatus. They're big, heavy apparatus, and I mean, we had to replace suspensions, a transmission, some other, mechanical
That's behind
parts.
us.
Yeah, right. I'm not saying it was from that, but it was awful coincidental.
Chief,
But
now,
no snow, no
It
People-
snow.
must be the material
Yeah.
you use.
people have always asked me, and I'll let you explain it to people, on the ambulance and on the fire trucks, they see the chains hanging from below the vehicles.
Yep,
And they want to know, and I explained that it has to do with the static electricity or to remove any type of electrical charge that you may pick up. Is that the case?
the chains in front of the wheels?
That hang down?
Yeah, we don't have that, we haven't really purchased any apparatus like that in a while, but we did have that on a lot of our apparatus for a while. And those were, they were called on-spots. And the theory is, you ever see, like, people put the chains on their tires for better traction? Well, it was a contraption that you could actually flip a switch up in the cab, and the chains would come down and like spin in front of the tires, and you'd basically drive on the chain as it just continued to spin for traction. Yeah. Can't say that I ever actually used them in real life, but they were there just in case.
But the
So we stopped ordering those.
The ambulances in the back sometimes have chains hanging down.
Oh, I see what you're saying on that. Yeah, a lot of that is to prevent the dirt and mud and stuff from kicking up. And that causes a lot of havoc. Not only is it just dirty and gross when you're trying to open the doors, but it also causes a lot of havoc with the door handles and the locks and that sort of thing. It's not uncommon, probably once every couple of years, to have to replace the handles on the back of the ambulance, even with that there. So it gets nasty.
Chief, the automatic defibrillators that are around town, I know that they're in a lot of spots, and we purchased one for down at VFW a while back, and there was some talk about maybe getting a list of where they were, how many there are in town. Do you have any idea about that?
We have, some of our people have institutional knowledge of places that have them. When you call 911 and it's a potential cardiac arrest, they should be asking you that question. That'll be probably early on, one of the questions that they'll be asking you. So there's that. There is a system that we recently have access to that I want to try to advocate for people to sign up. With that new Community Connect and that whole system, we'll actually be able to integrate that in, so that the dispatchers and us will be able to know, if you register it, that there's an AED. So if somebody's calling 911 that's not familiar with the building, they could say, hey, there's an AED there. It's at the top of the stairs on the right, next to the men's room, or whatever the case may be, and hopefully get that to the person, because those make a huge difference for people.
Do you guys inspect those? Do you do?
We
that?
do not, yeah.
Okay.
Whoever has the AED is
Supply.
responsible to make sure it's in a state of readiness.
And they
Yeah.
also, most of them, they chirp.
They
It's
do.
like a- It's like
Yeah, when
a,
it goes-
Yeah, they're super easy, yeah. It generally will sound like a smoke detector with a low battery.
Yeah.
And so, I always tell people, if you have an AED around and you're hearing that and it doesn't look like the smoke detectors, go check the AED, because generally it'll, like you said, it'll chirp, and it's supposed to be annoying on purpose.
So you'd be,
Yeah.
under this new system, be able to identify where they are in town
Yep,
and know if somebody has a call, dispatch is gonna see a red light or whatever to say that there's an AED.
yeah, it should be tied to that address, yeah.
That's awesome.
do we know how many
Yeah.
there are in town?
I don't. A fair amount. They definitely, the prices come down a little bit over the years.
Yeah.
When they first came out, they were like $3,500.
It is
They're
great.
still expensive, but you're probably looking around maybe $1,400 for an average one, or entry level one. But they make a huge difference for people. So an AED and CPR makes a tremendous difference.
I know that you guys are like the go-to people for the animals up in the tree. How many cat rescues do you do?
I don't think I've done any, to be honest with you. Yeah,
That's made for TV stuff.
yeah.
Back on Squad 51.
That's always a tough question, right? Do you send a ladder truck that costs around $1 million and have a person to go up there and risk getting hurt to get a cat out of the tree that's probably going to come down on their own when they get hungry? The same point, I love animals, and I know people love their animals too. So we try to do what we can do to try to help them out and coax cat. I've gotten birds out of trees before, and animals out of walls.
Dogs and stone drains.
We did have, yeah.
Dogs and rivers or?
On the technical rescue part of it for the county team, we had a couple years ago a deer, a little fawn in a storm drain that we rescued. And we also do, surprisingly, it's a thing, horse rescue. And the county technical rescue team, we actually have a horse harness. And to give you perspective, like the harness that I have cost about $350. The horse harness is about $3,500. But we got the money donated for that a while back, and I bet you we've used it, geez, I bet you about 8 times or so for horses, yeah.
And I know you
So-
have the animal oxygen masks as well.
Yes, we do, yeah, so we have that, and then there's a couple other things I hope I don't forget to tell you about the animal stuff is, to finish answering your first question, so the cats in the trees, but we will go, like I told you, for like the deer and the thing, sometimes there's a dog or something stuck on the ice or whatever, we kind of have to evaluate too, is a civilian gonna go, if we don't go and do this rescue, is a civilian gonna try to do it themselves, right? Because they don't believe that it's gonna have the outcome that they want unless they do that. So it's kind of a calculated risk, like a lot of decisions we make in our profession. So more often than not, we'll go out there and try to do it because we have the equipment and the training and the support to do it safely, you know. So I think it's a good use of our resources when we do that. So, and to mention with the dog masks, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Nero's Law, which is a law that came out probably a couple of years ago that actually requires us to have training on treating canines, police canines, in case they get injured in the line of duty. And we're actually allowed to transport them to, you know, a veterinary trauma center. So we have equipment to do that. We've had training didactically and practically with dogs. So that's a pretty neat thing that we do that you probably wouldn't think of either. Prior to that, we're not allowed to transport animals in the ambulance. It's against Department of Public Health regulations.
The dog that was shot in Braintree that started the whole
Yeah.
thing at the State House.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Sean, thank
So-
you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. Those are a lot of great questions. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think I kind of glossed over 2 important guests here tonight. Julie Hall, please stand up
Oh, okay.
and wave to the cameras. And Julie, just tell us, were you serving on the committee now? Been
Sure.
for a while?
Yeah, I just got onto the committee, the state committee, the Mass GOP.
Right.
And we went to our first inaugural meeting on April 6th. And I did report back, my perception was that people have put a lot of stuff in the past. There seems to be a group that just wants to move forward.
Right.
And so I wanted to get that message out to everybody.
Right.
It was my impression when I left is, you know, even though your candidates don't win, there was nobody standing up calling anybody a name. There was nothing. People were smiling on the way out the door. So let's keep our fingers
And
crossed.
she's in our backyard, which is nice to have, you know? Michael, please stand up. Michael's going to be running for the, you know, I'm still not ready to say Jay's retiring, but you told him tonight he has big shoes to fill, and he's ready to rumble, and I hope he has the best tutor at his side. But Michael, a few words if you like.
Yeah, my name is Mike Chasen. I could just tell you a little information about myself. I live in Foxborough. I've been there for 3 years now. I'm a contractor by trade, or carpenter by trade. Contractor is what I do day to day. I own a business, mostly residential stuff. Like you said, huge shoes to fill. I'm going to be trying to soak up as much as I possibly can from both of these guys, not just Jay, but Steve as well.
Right.
And looking for as much insight as I can get from all the people in the community. That's, at the end of the day, the most important thing.
Correct.
Good.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.